We've all had those moments as teenagers when we're convinced our parents were the villains of our story. Maybe they grounded you, or maybe they didn't get it. But for one girl in Los Angeles, that teenage angst wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal, bloody reality. What happens when you find out your inheritance isn't a college fund, but a weapon of mass destruction that demands you hurt yourself to save the world? Today, we're talking about the Witchbreaker, the reluctant leader and the goth icon of the Marvel Universe. We're diving into the history of Nico Minoru. Welcome back to Marvel Echoes Resonance. I'm your host, Will, and today we're shifting gears. In our last episode, we talked about Luke Cage, a man who took a prison number and turned it into a badge of honor, owning his identity from day one. Today's subject is the exact opposite. We're looking at a hero who spent the first decade of her existence running away from who she was, only to realize you can't outrun your blood. To really understand Nico, we have to hop back into that time machine and go back to 2003. Now, if you grew up in the 90s like me, you remember the comics were loud, big guns, lots of pouches, very extreme. But by the early 2000s, Marvel was trying something different. They launched an imprint called Tsunami, and it was designed to capture the manga crowd, focusing on younger characters and a more emotional, character-driven story. Most of these books washed away, but one of them was a masterpiece, Runaways, created by Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alfona. The premise is genius in its simplicity. 6 teenagers in Los Angeles think their parents are just boring, wealthy adults who meet once a year for a charity event. Nico is the outcast of the group. She's got that gothic wardrobe, the attitude, the whole I don't want to be here vibe, but they decide to spy on a meeting. And they don't see a charity drive. They see a ritual sacrifice. It turns out their parents, the Pride, are a mafia of time travelers, aliens, dark wizards, all running a West Coast crime scene. This is the origin spark. It's not a radioactive spider bite, it's a betrayal. And for Nico, it gets visceral fast. When she confronts her mother, Tina tries to stab her with a magical staff, but instead of killing her, her body absorbs it. This is the Staff of One, and honestly, it's one of the coolest and most messed up weapons in comic history. It doesn't live in a scabbard, it lives inside Nico's chest. And to get it out, she has to bleed. Now, as a dad, the idea of a kid cutting themselves to access her power is quite horrifying. But narratively, it's kind of brilliant. It grounds magic. In the Marvel Universe, Doctor Strange waves his hands and portals appear. Scarlet Witch blinks and, well, reality changes. Nico, on the other hand, has to pay a physical toll. It tells us immediately that her magic is dangerous, painful, and connected to her mortality. But the real hook, the thing that makes Nico a fan favorite, is the one spell rule. The Staff of One can do anything, literally anything, but it can only cast a spell once. Think about that. If you're playing an RPG like Final Fantasy or Baldur's Gate, you find a spell that works, like Fireball, and you spam it until you win. Nico can't do that. If she says the word freeze to stop a bad guy, it works, but she can never use the word freeze again to cast magic. If she tries, the staff will misfire and do something unpredictable. This forces Nico to be a poet warrior. She has to be the smartest person in the room. She burns through freeze, then chill, then glaciate, winter wonderland, absolute zero. She's constantly consulting thesauruses between missions and even learning new languages. It turns every fight into a puzzle where her ammunition is her own vocabulary. So, the Runaways do exactly what the title says. They run. They become a found family, and Nico, despite being the one who just wants to be left alone, ends up leading them because she's the one holding the nuke. But we have to talk about the moment that changed her from a runaway into a survivor. We have to talk about Avengers Arena. Around 2012, of course, Hunger Games was taking over the world. Marvel decided to lean into that energy. The villain arcade kidnapped 16 teenage heroes, including Nico, and dropped them into Murder World. The rules were simple: kill or be killed. This wasn't a fun superhero romp. This was brutal. And in this arc, Nico gets deconstructed. Her staff is depowered. She's isolated in the snow. And in a heartbreaking moment, her teammate, Chase Stein, who was being mind controlled, of course, attacks her. He rips the staff from her hand and in the struggle, Nico's arm is severed. She's thrown off the cliff, bleeding out in the snow, and the scene sticks with me. She's lying there, dying, and she's terrified. Not of death, but of dying alone. In her last ounce of strength, she crawls to the staff and whispers a single word, help. Now remember the rule. She used the word help, and the staff, interpreted in the most violent way possible. It resurrected her, but it replaced her severed arm with a magical gold gauntlet, the witch arm. It helped her by turning her into a weapon. The Nico that stood up from the snow wasn't the same girl. She buried her enemies alive. She was cold, ruthless, and efficient. It was a trauma that defined her for years, proving that while you can survive your parents' legacy, you might lose a piece of your soul, or in her case, arm, in the process. So let's fast forward a bit to catch you up on where the Sister Grimm is today. Because thankfully, she didn't stay frozen in that trauma forever. Her journey over the last decade has really been finding a place where she doesn't have to run anymore. After the Nightmare Murder World, Nico eventually stepped out of the teen hero shadow and into the big leagues with A-Force. This was a massive shift in status. Suddenly, she wasn't hiding in underground hostels. She was standing in the front lines along heavy hitters like Captain Marvel and She-Hulk. And this era was crucial for her healing. She bonded with a character named Singularity, a sentient pocket universe who took the form of a little girl. It was this beautiful narrative echo where Nico, whose own mother tried to kill her, became a fierce, protective mother figure over Singularity. It showed us that Arcade hadn't completely hardened her heart. From there, we got the reunion we were all waiting for. In the 2017 Runaways revival by Rainbow Rowell, the family got back together. And this is some fans' favorite era for her, because it finally solidified what they had been reading between the lines for years. Her relationship with Carolina Dean. They finally became a couple, and it wasn't just a happily ever after fade to black. It was messy, it was real, and it dealt with the baggage of the two people who had been through war together. But more importantly, it gave Nico a home. And that brings us to the absolute current day, and honestly, Nico has never been more powerful. If you've played the Midnight Suns video game or read the recent comics, you know she's leveled up. She is currently a professor at Strange Academy. Think about that trajectory. She started as a student terrified of her own bloodline, and now she's the one teaching the next generation of magic users. Kids like Doyle Dormammu, warning them about things like the cost of power. She's standing shoulder to shoulder with Magic, Blade, and Ghost Rider as a key member of the Midnight Suns. She has fully embraced her heritage as a dark wizard, but she uses it on her own terms. She's no longer running away from the darkness. She's the one holding the lantern for everyone else. It's been a wild ride from the basement of LA to the classrooms of Strange Academy. But looking at Nico's journey, I keep coming back to the mechanics of that staff. It demands pain to function. It forces you to constantly reinvent yourself to keep using it. So I'll leave you with this question. Do you think the one spell rule is the ultimate creative restriction that makes her a better hero? Or is it just a curse that ensures she can never truly be comfortable with her power? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for listening to this episode of Marvel Echoes. Hope you enjoyed opening the grimoire and on Nico as much as I did. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. Leaving a like and a review really helps the podcast grow and helps other fans find us. Also, leave a comment for future episode ideas. Is there a character you think has a hidden legacy and we haven't explored yet? Let me know. And for more content, including deep dive articles, reading guides, and infographics, make sure that you visit the website in the links below. Until next time, true believers, make mine Marvel.